It was a quiet evening at Le Royale, one of New York City's most exclusive fine dining establishments. The restaurant was a symbol of elegance, with its dimly lit chandeliers, marble floors, and walls adorned with abstract art. Each table was draped in crisp white linens, and the air was filled with the gentle hum of conversation, clinking glasses, and the soft notes of a piano playing in the background. Patrons here weren't just diners. They were the city's elite. CEOs, celebrities, and influential figures who relished their privacy in the restaurant's discreet setting. Seated near the corner of the room was Barron, quietly enjoying dinner with a small group of friends. At just 18 years old, he carried himself with a quiet confidence that came from years of being in the public eye. Dressed in a tailored navy suit, he exuded an air of sophistication but kept a low profile, preferring not to draw attention to himself. Tonight wasn't about politics or appearances. It was about unwinding with a few close companions. As Barron sipped his sparkling water and listened to his friends discuss plans for an upcoming project, he noticed a subtle shift in the atmosphere. Across the room, a waiter had approached a table occupied by a group of well-dressed, middle-aged men. At first, the interaction seemed routine, but as Barron observed more closely, he realized something was off. The man leading the group, a sharply dressed gentleman with graying hair and a loud, commanding voice, appeared agitated. His exaggerated gestures and raised tone began to draw the attention of nearby diners. The waiter, a young man no older than 20, stood nervously clutching his notepad, his face pale as he listened to the man berate him. "This is unacceptable," the man barked, slamming his hand on the table for emphasis. "How hard is it to get a simple order right? I didn't pay hundreds of dollars for this level of incompetence," the waiter stammered, his voice barely audible. "I am very sorry, sir. I'll have the kitchen remake the dish right away." "Remake it?" the man sneered, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "Do you think that's going to fix the fact that you ruined our entire evening? Do you have any idea who I am?" The man's companions chuckled, clearly enjoying the scene, while the waiter's shoulders slumped further under the weight of their mockery. The restaurant staff exchanged uneasy glances, unsure of how to intervene without escalating the situation. Barron watched the interaction unfold, a frown settling on his face. He had been raised to treat everyone with dignity and respect, no matter their position. His mother, Melania, often reminded him of the importance of kindness, especially toward those who worked hard to serve others. This was not a moment he could ignore. Without a word to his friends, Barron pushed back his chair and stood. His tall frame and calm demeanor commanded attention as he made his way across the room. The low murmur of conversation quieted as diners noticed him approaching the table at the center of the commotion. The agitated man glanced up, momentarily caught off guard by Barron's presence. "Can I help you?" he asked, his tone laced with irritation. Barron smiled politely but didn't hesitate. "I couldn't help but notice the way you were speaking to the waiter," he said, his voice calm but firm. "I understand that mistakes happen, but there's no excuse for treating someone with such disrespect." The man's companions exchanged amused glances, clearly unbothered by the confrontation. "And who exactly are you to lecture me?" the man replied, narrowing his eyes. "Do you even know who you're talking to?" Barron didn't flinch. "It doesn't matter who I am or who you are," he said evenly. "What matters is how we treat the people around us. This young man is doing his best to serve you, and he doesn't deserve to be humiliated in front of an entire restaurant." A hush fell over the room as Barron's words sank in. The waiter, who had been staring at the floor moments earlier, looked up, his eyes wide with surprise. The man at the table, however, wasn't ready to back down. "Listen, kid," he said, his tone dismissive. "You might think you're doing something noble here, but this is none of your business. If you don't like how I handle things, you're free to leave." Barron's expression remained composed, but his voice took on a firmer edge. "Respect is everyone's business, and if you think belittling someone makes you important, you're mistaken. True character is shown in how we treat those who can't fight back." For a moment, the man was silent, clearly unprepared for the young man's conviction. The diners around them, who had been pretending not to listen, now openly watched the exchange, their expressions a mix of surprise and approval. Before the man could respond, the restaurant manager appeared, his face etched with concern. "Is everything all right here?" he asked, his voice tentative. Barron turned to the manager, his tone softening. "I believe this gentleman has a complaint about his meal," he said. "I'm sure the staff will do everything they can to make it right. But I think it's important to remind everyone that respect is non-negotiable." The manager nodded quickly, understanding the subtle message in Barron's words. He turned to the waiter, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Why don't you take a quick break? I'll handle this table." The young waiter hesitated, glancing nervously at the man who had berated him. But the encouraging nod from Barron gave him the confidence to step away. As the manager addressed the situation, Barron returned to his table, where his friends looked at him with a mix of admiration and disbelief. "That was bold," one of them said. "Do you think he'll actually listen?" Barron shrugged, picking up his glass of water. "Maybe, maybe not. But if standing up for someone makes even one person think twice about their actions, it's worth it." The ripple effect of the moment didn't end there. Unbeknownst to Barron, a fellow diner had recorded the exchange on their phone. Within hours, the video was uploaded to social media with the caption, "Barron Trump stands up for a bullied waiter. This is what true class looks like." By the next morning, the video had gone viral, sparking conversations about kindness, respect, and the power of speaking up. Thousands of people praised Barron for his actions, sharing their own stories of times they had witnessed or experienced similar moments. As for the waiter, he found himself overwhelmed by the outpouring of support. Strangers sent messages of encouragement, while the restaurant staff rallied around him, ensuring he knew his worth. For the first time in weeks, he felt a sense of pride in his work, knowing that someone had seen him, not just as a waiter, but as a person. The next morning, Barron woke up to a flurry of notifications on his phone. Messages, tags, and mentions poured in from every corner of social media. Confused, he opened one of the links his friend had sent him. It led to a viral video. His interaction at the restaurant had been recorded and was now making waves across the internet. The video captured the entirety of the confrontation, from Barron standing up to the rude customer to his calm yet firm defense of the waiter. The comments section was overflowing with reactions. "This is what leadership looks like. Well done, Barron. It's not every day you see someone stand up for the little guy in such a classy way. Kindness doesn't cost a thing, and Barron Trump just proved that." Some comments were skeptical, questioning if the moment had been staged or whether Barron had ulterior motives. But the overwhelming majority applauded his actions, calling him a role model for speaking up against injustice in such a public setting. Barron, however, wasn't interested in the attention. For him, the moment had been about doing what felt right. He hadn't expected it to go viral, and he certainly hadn't done it for recognition. He put his phone down and decided to get on with his day. Later that afternoon, Barron received a call from his mother, Melania. She had seen the video and wanted to talk to him. "I'm proud of you, Barron," she said, her voice warm. "It takes courage to stand up for someone, especially when no one else will." "Thanks, Mom," he replied. "But it wasn't anything extraordinary. It was just the right thing to do." "Sometimes doing the right thing is extraordinary," she said. "And sometimes the smallest actions make the biggest difference." Her words stayed with Barron as the day went on. He couldn't stop thinking about the young waiter and how shaken he had looked that night. Determined to make sure the waiter was okay, Barron decided to visit the restaurant again. When he arrived at Royale, the staff greeted him warmly. The manager, who recognized Barron immediately, came over with a grateful smile. "Mr. Trump, it's good to see you again. Thank you for what you did last night. It meant a lot to us." "I wasn't looking for thanks," Barron said modestly, "but I was hoping to check in on the waiter from last night. Is he here?" The manager nodded. "His name is Ethan. He's on his break right now. Let me get him for you." A few moments later, Ethan appeared, looking both surprised and nervous. "Mr. Trump," he said, his voice hesitant. "I didn't expect to see you again." Barron smiled, extending his hand. "It's Barron, and I just wanted to see how you were doing." Ethan shook his hand, his grip firm despite his obvious nerves. "I'm okay," he said. "Honestly, I've never had someone stand up for me like that before." I didn't know what to say. "You don't have to say anything," Barron replied. "You didn't deserve to be treated like that. No one does." Ethan nodded, his expression softening. "I really appreciate it. And, thanks to you, things have been different today. People keep coming up to me and saying they saw the video. They're being so nice. It's a little overwhelming." Barron chuckled. "I can imagine. But you earned their kindness, Ethan. You were just doing your job, and you didn't deserve to be humiliated for it." As they talked, Ethan shared more about his life. He was working at the restaurant to help support his family while attending community college. His dream was to become a teacher, but between school and work, life often felt like an uphill battle. "Some days, it feels like I'll never get there," he admitted. Barron listened intently, his respect for Ethan growing with every word. He saw in Ethan a quiet strength, the kind that perseveres despite the odds. Before leaving, Barron handed him a small envelope. "This is just a little something to help," he said. "Use it for whatever you need, school, your family, anything." Ethan opened the envelope after Barron left, his breath catching when he saw a check inside. It wasn't just a small gesture. It was enough to pay for an entire semester of college tuition. For the first time in a long while, Ethan felt a glimmer of hope. Meanwhile, the ripple effects of the viral video continued to grow. News outlets picked up the story, turning it into a national discussion about respect, kindness, and the treatment of service workers. Many praised Barron for using his platform to highlight an issue often overlooked, while others reflected on their own behavior toward those in the service industry. The incident also sparked conversations within the restaurant industry itself. Several organizations launched initiatives to promote better treatment of workers, while advocacy groups used the momentum to push for improved workplace policies. For Barron, the attention felt surreal. While he appreciated the positive response, he remained focused on the bigger picture. Inspired by Ethan's story, he began reaching out to organizations that supported service workers and students in need. Quietly, without fanfare, he partnered with a nonprofit to set up a scholarship fund for students working in the service industry while pursuing higher education. The fund, named after Ethan, quickly gained traction. Donations poured in from people across the country, many of whom were moved by the story and wanted to make a difference. Within weeks, the fund had raised enough to provide scholarships to dozens of students. One evening, as Barron scrolled through updates about the fund, he received an email from Ethan. The subject line read, "Thank you." Barron opened it to find a heartfelt message. "Barron, I don't even know where to begin. What you did for me changed my life, and I'm not just talking about the check. You reminded me that there are good people in the world. People who care even when they don't have to. I'm going to keep working hard, and one day, I hope I can pay it forward the way you did for me. Thank you for seeing me when no one else did." Barron leaned back in his chair, a faint smile on his face. He thought about the night at the restaurant and how a simple act of standing up for someone had turned into something so much bigger. It was a reminder that even the smallest gestures could create ripples that reached far beyond what anyone could imagine. As the evening wore on, Barron looked out at the city skyline, feeling a quiet sense of fulfillment. The world wasn't perfect, but moments like these reminded him that kindness could make a difference. One person, one gesture, one ripple at a time. A month had passed since the night at Royale, but the ripple effects of Barron Trump's actions were still being felt. The scholarship fund named after Ethan had grown exponentially, helping dozens of students across the country pursue their dreams while working to support themselves and their families. The story of a young man standing up for a bullied waiter had become a symbol of kindness, inspiring countless others to reflect on their own behavior and make small changes in their lives. Barron, however, had returned to his quiet routine, content to stay out of the spotlight. For him, the experience wasn't about fame or recognition. It was about making a difference, no matter how small. But the world hadn't forgotten his gesture, and neither had Ethan. One afternoon, Barron received an unexpected email. The subject line read, "A special invitation." Opening it, he discovered a heartfelt message from Ethan, inviting him to a small event at the community college where Ethan was now thriving as a student. The message read, "Barron, I don't know if you'll have time to come, but I wanted to invite you to our community's appreciation night. It's a chance for me to say thank you, not just for what you did for me, but for how you've inspired so many others. I hope you can make it." Curious and touched, Barron decided to attend. He arrived at the college on a crisp evening, keeping a low profile as usual. The event was modest but full of heart, held in a small auditorium adorned with hand-painted signs and decorations created by the students. Families, teachers, and volunteers filled the room, chatting warmly as they waited for the program to begin. When Barron walked in, Ethan spotted him immediately. His face lit up, and he hurried over to greet him. "You actually came?" Ethan said, shaking Barron's hand with a wide grin. "Of course," Barron replied. "I wouldn't miss it." As the event unfolded, Barron watched as students and faculty took the stage to share stories of how the scholarship fund had changed their lives. One young woman tearfully explained how the financial support had allowed her to focus on her studies and achieve her dream of becoming a nurse. A single father shared how the program had helped him balance work, school, and raising his daughter. When Ethan's turn came, the room fell silent. He stepped up to the microphone, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "A month ago, I never thought I'd be standing here," he began. "I was just a guy trying to get through another shift, hoping to make it to the next day. And then someone did something incredible, not just for me, but for everyone who felt unseen." Ethan paused, glancing at Barron in the crowd. Barron Trump reminded me that kindness isn't just a gesture, it's a responsibility. And because of that one act, my life and the lives of so many others have changed. So, thank you, Barron. Not just for what you did, but for believing in me when I didn't believe in myself. The audience erupted into applause as Ethan stepped away from the microphone, his eyes glistening with tears. Barron, seated quietly in the back, felt a wave of gratitude and humility wash over him. He hadn't done anything extraordinary in his eyes. He had simply stood up for someone who needed it. But seeing the impact of that moment now, he realized how powerful even the smallest acts of kindness could be. As the event came to a close, Ethan walked Barron to the door. "I don't know how to thank you enough," he said. "You've already thanked me," Barron replied, gesturing to the event behind them. "All of this, everything you've done since that night, that's the real thank you." Ethan smiled, nodding. "I'll make sure to pay it forward." Barron placed a hand on his shoulder. "I know you will." As Barron left the college that night, the crisp air carrying the faint sounds of laughter and conversation, he couldn't help but reflect on how one small decision had created a chain reaction of positivity. It was a reminder that the world didn't need grand gestures or sweeping changes to become a better place. Sometimes, all it took was one person choosing to care. And in that quiet realization, Barron felt a sense of fulfillment that no amount of recognition could ever bring. The world still had its challenges, but moments like these proved that kindness, pure, unselfish kindness, could make all the difference.